The storm clawed at the frozen wasteland with a fury I had never seen before. Snow tore through the air in blinding sheets, howling like some primeval beast prowling the edge of the world. We had barely made it to Outpost Epsilon, a remote Antarctic research station that had gone dark 3 days ago. No transmissions. No distress signals. Just silence. Our mission was simple: get in, locate the team, and bring them back. But as the Chinook shuddered in the turbulence, I had the gnawing feeling that nothing about this would be simple. 1 minute out, the pilot barked through the comms, his voice barely cutting through the storm. I tightened my grip on the harness as the helicopter descended, the searchlight cutting through the whiteout. Beside me, Captain Elias Ward, my second-in-command, checked his rifle with military precision. "This place gives me the creeps already," Elias muttered. I couldn't blame him. Even before it had gone dark, Outpost Epsilon was an enigma. A top-secret deep-drill research station, buried beneath the ice, funded by organizations that didn't officially exist. Whatever they were digging for, it wasn't oil. As the skids touched down, we moved fast. The wind screamed through the open hatch as we jumped out, crunching onto the ice in heavy boots. The outpost's main entrance loomed ahead, a reinforced steel door buried in a cliffside of ice. No welcome committee. No sign of life. "Something's wrong," I said, my gut twisting. "This place should be lit up like a damn Christmas tree." "Doors ajar," said Dr. Lillian Voss, our lead scientist, her voice tight with unease. "That's not protocol." I reached out, fingers grazing the ice-caked metal. A crack of frost broke away, revealing deep gouges along the steel. Scratches. Not from tools. From something else. Elias caught my glance. "That looked like claw marks to you." I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The second we stepped inside, the smell hit us first, stale air, tinged with something rotten. The emergency lights flickered a sickly red, casting long shadows down the main corridor. The walls were streaked with something dark. Blood. Frozen in grotesque patterns where it had sprayed. "Jesus," whispered Mason, our medic, as he knelt beside a body slumped against the wall. He checked the pulse out of instinct, but the frostbite and hollowed-out eyes said enough. "No way, that's hypothermia," Lillian said, kneeling beside him. "Something did this to him." My radio crackled, and the pilot's voice came through, urgent. "Commander, you need to see this." We hurried back to the entrance, stepping into the storm. The Chinook was still idling, its searchlights sweeping the ice. But something had changed. Tracks. Dozens of them. They weren't there when we landed. And they weren't human. Large, clawed, moving in and out of the snow like something burrowing beneath the surface. "Tell me those are some kind of native wildlife," Elias said. I met his gaze. "There's nothing alive down here but us." And we weren't alone. The wind shifted. A low, guttural sound echoed through the whiteout. Not the wind. Not the storm. Something else. And then the ice beneath our feet trembled. The ice trembled again. Not a subtle vibration. A deep, guttural quake, like something massive shifting beneath us. "Inside, now!" I barked. The team didn't hesitate. We rushed back into Outpost Epsilon, sealing the heavy steel door behind us. The lock hissed into place, but the unsettling truth was, I didn't know if that would be enough. Elias stood by my side, rifle raised. "You felt that, right?" I nodded, my fingers tightening around my own weapon. "Something's moving under the ice." A pause. Then, Dr. Lillian Voss, our scientist, whispered, "Or waking up." No one spoke after that. The outpost was a maze of dim corridors, lit only by flickering emergency lights. The main control room was our best bet for answers. We moved cautiously, stepping over bloodstains, passing empty rooms where things had been torn apart. Papers were scattered across the floor, monitors flickered with static. Chairs were overturned as if someone had left in a hurry, or been dragged away. Then, we found the security station. "Shit," Mason muttered. The room was a mess, monitors shattered, the floors slick with frozen blood. But the security footage was still running, the last recorded moments looping on a fractured screen. I stepped closer. The footage was grainy, distorted by static, but the horror was clear. The research team, scientists, engineers, people just like us, were running. Something huge crashed through the steel hallway behind them. The camera glitched, but not before I saw it. A towering silhouette, something that shouldn't exist. It moved unnaturally, its body a mass of writhing tendrils and bone-white exoskeleton. Its elongated head tilted toward the camera, and for a second, I swore it saw me. Then, the footage cut out. The silence in the room was suffocating. Elias exhaled. "That's what we're dealing with." Lillian's face had gone pale. That thing wasn't alive when they found it." I turned to her. "Explain." She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking to a research report strewn across the console. She picked it up, scanning it with shaking hands. "They weren't just drilling for ice core samples," she murmured. "They found something ancient. A biological anomaly, encased in ice. But it wasn't dead. It was dormant." I clenched my jaw. "And they woke it up." Lillian hesitated. "Not intentionally. But once they exposed it to oxygen, the cells began reactivating." She flipped the page. It spreads. Not like a virus. More like an infestation." The floor groaned beneath us. Then, from deep within the outpost, we heard it. A wet, unnatural skittering. It wasn't beneath the ice anymore. It was inside. The first scream shattered the silence. A horrible, choked gurgling sound echoed through the corridor. Then the sickening thump-thump-thump of something crawling unnaturally fast toward us. "Move!" I shouted. We barely had time to react before it lunged into view. It had once been human. The lab coat, shredded and hanging off its grotesquely twisted form, suggested as much. But its skin was wrong, stretched too thin, veins bulging with something alien. Its jaw had unhinged, elongated into something not human, its teeth serrated like a predator's. And those eyes. Pitch black. Hollow. As if something else looked through them. It shrieked, a sound that scraped against my skull. Then it charged. Elias fired first. A burst of gunfire tore through its torso, but it barely flinched. The creature moved faster than anything that size should. I barely got my own rifle up before it was on us. It slammed into Elias, knocking him back. He grunted, struggling against the writhing limbs that lashed at his throat. I didn't think. I just acted. One shot. Straight to the head. The thing collapsed, twitching violently before going still. A horrible stench filled the room, like burning chemicals. Then, silence. Elias coughed, shoving the corpse off him. Jesus Christ. Lillian knelt beside the thing, hands shaking as she examined it. "It's not just infected," she whispered. "It's becoming something else." I turned to the others. "If there's one, there are more." And then we heard it. More skittering. More things waking up. "Get to the lower levels," I ordered. Mason's eyes widened. "Lower levels? Are you out of your mind?" "They wouldn't have drilled this deep without an escape plan," I snapped. "There has to be another way out." A blood-curdling howl echoed from the corridor. More shapes slithered in the shadows. No more time. We ran. The stairwell spiraled down into darkness. The deeper we went, the colder it got. The emergency lights flickered, casting our shadows long and distorted against the walls. We reached a reinforced door at the bottom. It took both Elias and me to force it open. Inside, we found something worse. The chamber stretched out before us, a cavern of ice and metal. But at its center, a structure. Not human. Not natural. It pulsed, organic yet metallic, covered in runic symbols that made my vision blur if I stared too long. And inside, a massive cocoon. It pulsed. Something was still inside it. Lillian gasped. They didn't just find one specimen, they found the source. Elias swore. "We need to blow this place to hell." I agreed. But before I could say it, the cocoon cracked. A deep, resonant clicking sound echoed through the chamber. Then, the ice above us trembled. And from the darkness, something huge moved. The cocoon shuddered. A deep, reverberating click filled the chamber, like the grinding of ancient bones. The ice above us groaned, fracturing in thin spiderweb cracks. I raised my rifle, but I already knew bullets wouldn't be enough. Something inside that cocoon was waking up. And something above us was already here. Run. My voice was barely a whisper, but the urgency hit like a gunshot. No one hesitated. Elias yanked Lillian by the arm, dragging her away from the structure. Mason stumbled forward, cursing under his breath. We sprinted toward the side exit, barely squeezing through the half-collapsed corridor as the cavern behind us exploded in movement. A wet, tearing sound. Something massive was shedding its prison. We didn't look back. The tunnels twisted around us, a maze of metal and ice. The emergency lights flickered, some completely dead, others stuttering in erratic bursts. The facility was dying, the weight of the Antarctic shifting above it. The walls shook. Another howl rang out, not human, not anything I could describe. Elias swore. That didn't come from behind us. I didn't need to check the tracker to know he was right. Something else was ahead. We rounded a corner, and Mason screamed. A corpse slammed into him, toppling him backward. Only, it wasn't dead. Not yet. It used to be a scientist. The shredded remains of a research suit still clung to its mutated form. Its face was a mess of twisting tendrils, its eyes black voids that didn't reflect light. Its arms, now elongated, jagged with unnatural bone protrusions, lunged for Mason's throat. I fired first. The head burst in a spray of black, inky fluid. The thing convulsed, its limbs twitching violently before collapsing on top of Mason. He shoved it off him, gasping. Jesus! Then, we heard more. A chorus of clicking noises, skittering just beyond the darkness. They're everywhere, Lillian whispered. The radio crackled. At first, I thought it was static. Then, Mayday, anyone out there, repeat, this is Delta 5, we are. My stomach dropped. Another team was still alive. I snatched my radio. Delta 5, this is Commander Scott. Where are you? Static. Then, the extraction tunnel, we're pinned. A burst of gunfire. Then, the screams. The line cut out. Extraction tunnel, I said, already moving. That's our way out. The air grew colder as we ran. I kept checking behind us, but the tunnels were eerily empty. The creatures weren't chasing. That terrified me more. It meant they were waiting. We reached a bulkhead door, half open, crushed inward by something huge. Beyond it, a tunnel stretched straight up. A massive ice shaft, reinforced with metal scaffolding and a freight elevator. At the top, a hatch. Our way out. And at the bottom, a massacre. Bodies littered the frozen floor. 5 men. Military gear. Torn to pieces. Delta 5 never made it. Mason gagged. Jesus Christ. Elias swept the area. No sign of the creatures. Lillian took a shaky breath. Yet, I moved fast, stepping over the corpses. The freight elevator was still intact. If we could power it. Then, the bulkhead behind us slammed shut, trapping us inside. The temperature dropped. The lights flickered once. Then, from the shadows above us, it came down. Not like the others. Not the twisted husks that used to be human. This thing was worse. The true form. It descended slow, limbs bending wrong, its exoskeleton rippling in a way that made my stomach churn. It was watching us. No eyes, just an elongated head, smooth and bone-pale. Its body moved like liquid nightmare, tendrils coiling in the air. It was studying us. Then, it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. But I heard it. Inside my head. A voice like a dying star, whispering from the void of space. You should not have come. Lillian screamed. The thing lunged. Bullets slammed into it. It barely flinched. The first tentacle shot out, slamming Elias into the scaffolding. His ribs cracked on impact. Mason fired wildly, but the creature moved too fast. I grabbed Lillian, shoved her toward the elevator panel. Power it up. She fumbled with the controls, fingers shaking. The creature lashed out, a whip-like limb catching Mason's leg. He screamed, dragged toward its gaping maw. I fired. Point blank. The bullet hit deep, black, inky fluid spraying against my suit. The creature reeled back. Mason scrambled away. Move! Move! Lillian slammed the switch. The elevator hummed to life. The creature screeched. It leapt. The doors slammed shut. The elevator shot up. The tunnel rumbled. The ice cracked. The thing wasn't dead. It was climbing. We weren't fast enough. Lillian sobbed. Elias clutched his ribs. Mason was bleeding. I looked up. The hatch was seconds away. But so was the thing. It was right behind us. And then, the ice collapsed. A shockwave sent the elevator spinning. My vision blurred. My ears rang. Then, light. Blinding, pure, white light. The hatch had blown open. We were at the surface. The Antarctic sky stretched above us, storm clouds swirling, the howling winds deafening. I gasped in the freezing air. We made it. Then, I turned. And I saw it. Rising from the shattered ice beneath us. The thing was still alive. And it wasn't alone. A deep, resonating tremor filled the air. The ground split. And from the depths of Antarctica, something else began to rise. The ice cracked open like the jaws of a leviathan. Something colossal shifted beneath us. The howling Antarctic winds barely muffled the deep, resonant vibration now pulsing through the air, something ancient, something waking up. And we were standing on top of it. The ground lurched. I grabbed Lillian, yanking her away as the ice beneath her gave way, revealing a chasm so deep it swallowed the emergency lights from our ruined facility below. Mason stumbled, barely catching himself. Elias, still clutching his ribs, was gasping, but there was no time to stop. Not when that thing was still climbing after us. Not when something worse was rising from below. The sky churned. Storm clouds spiraled in unnatural formations, twisted by some force that felt wrong. The air tasted electric, the way it does before lightning strikes, only this was stronger, like the atmosphere itself was splitting open. Then, from the depths below us, an arm emerged. Not the slithering, skeletal limbs of the creature we barely escaped from. This was something else. Something bigger. Titanic. Its flesh was blackened, calcified, its surface covered in runes that shimmered with a light that felt alive, symbols that burned into my vision when I stared too long. Then, another limb rose. Then another. The ground beneath us buckled. The thing we had awoken was coming through. I grabbed the radio. Command, do you copy? Only static. Then, a voice, choked, barely audible. Pulling you out, hold position. That was impossible. There was no way a rescue team was reaching us in time. Unless. The clouds above us split apart. And suddenly, lights. Blinding, artificial lights. From the storm, VTOL aircraft descended, their engines roaring. Black Ops. No insignia. Not ours. But they knew we were here. And they weren't coming to rescue us. The first strike hit before we could even react. A plasma missile streaked from the lead aircraft, detonating in the chasm behind us. A shockwave ripped through the ice, forcing us to dive for cover. The thing below let out a deafening sound, not a scream, not a roar, but something that bent reality itself. The second strike hit, sending jagged ice spears flying through the air. One of the tendrils from the original creature, a remnant of what we found buried, lashed upward, slamming into one of the VTOLs. The aircraft spiraled out of control, slamming into the ice in a fiery explosion. Chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. Mason grabbed my arm. What the hell is happening? I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing. We had to get out of here. The remaining aircraft descended. Rappelling lines dropped, figures in advanced combat suits sliding down with precision. These weren't normal soldiers. Their weapons, sleek, alien-looking, hummed with a power I didn't recognize. They weren't just here to kill the creatures. They were here to contain something. Or maybe, erase it. One of them pointed directly at me. Commander Scott. The voice came through my earpiece, mechanical, distorted. You're coming with us. I clenched my jaw. What about my team? A pause. Then, without hesitation. They're expendable. I raised my rifle. So am I said. Mason and Lillian were already moving, pulling Elias with them as the storm intensified. The ground beneath us was fracturing, and the thing beneath us was still rising. The lead soldier sighed. Your call. Then, they opened fire. The world exploded into gunfire. Lillian screamed. Mason returned fire, his bullets bouncing uselessly off their armor. Elias collapsed, too weak to move. I tackled the nearest soldier, ripping the rifle from his grip and slamming the butt into his visor. He staggered back, but these guys were too fast, too strong. We weren't meant to survive this. We were never meant to make it out. Then, the earth split. A massive shockwave sent everyone flying. And from the abyss, the true horror emerged. It was beyond anything human minds could comprehend. A colossus of ancient flesh and pulsing energy, its body twisting through dimensions I didn't even understand. The symbols carved into its skin flared like dying stars. And in that moment, I heard it. Not words. Not thoughts. Just understanding. This thing wasn't just a creature. It was a god. A forgotten titan, sealed beneath Antarctica for millennia. And we had set it free. The Black Ops soldiers turned their weapons on it now. They didn't stand a chance. The first wave of energy obliterated them. Bodies disintegrated, their shadows burned into the ice. The remaining VTOLs tried to flee. They didn't make it. Tendrils of energy lashed out, tearing them from the sky. We ran. I didn't know where, just away. The storm raged. The sky split open, lightning flashing in unnatural colors. Then, through the chaos, a miracle. A final aircraft, skimming the ice toward us. A civilian evac. One of ours. Lillian sobbed in relief. Mason waved desperately. Elias barely clung to life. And I looked back. At the titan we had unleashed. At the ancient thing, no longer bound beneath the ice. At the cost of our survival. And I knew. We hadn't escaped. We had doomed the world. The ramp lowered. The pilot screamed at us to move. We climbed aboard. As we lifted off, I watched the Antarctic ice collapse below. The thing turned its head toward us, toward the world. It wasn't done. And neither were they. Because somewhere, in some government facility, someone already knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot.